5 years of breaking her back for the man she loved, but did she regret it? Of course not. Standing before the mirror, Ju smiled to herself, quite a satisfied smile. She was more than satisfied actually, she was thrilled, entranced, every word that meant she was head over heels for the man of her dreams. And who was that? Liam Pollard. The 29-year-old bachelor that was now the dreams of every maiden. But try as they might, he belonged to her, at least he was about to become hers. Tonight was the night she would finally get what she has always dreamt of. Right outside that door, the whole world was waiting to see her beloved profess his love for her. All she needed to do was walk out this room. However, she was beyond anxious. Perhaps, as they say, anticipation weakens the heart defenses. She, who was known for her decisiveness and strong-willed personality, was standing before a mirror sweating like a pig about to be slaughtered, whilst checking the perfection of her outfit for the umpteenth time. Her heart really did feel faint, beating like the hooves of 1,000 horses dashing through a field. "Miss, you don't have to be anxious, Dahlia," her personal maid said with laughter hidden in her tone. "Who said I'm anxious?" Ju tried to retort, but her shaky voice gave away her true emotions. "Finally getting repaid for your efforts. Rather than being anxious, you should be proud of yourself." The intelligent maid already began to retouch the makeup that was almost washed away by sweat. Indeed, Ju agreed with her maid's words. Even she could not understand why she was this anxious. She had always known she would end up as Liam's wife. She had wanted that right from the moment they first met at the age of 12. Crazy right, but she spared no thought pursuing that dream like it was the only reason for her existence. She lived, studied, and worked endlessly trying to create a platform where she could attain that dream. Now it was happening right before her eyes, so how could she let anxiousness make a fool of her? "You're right. I should go out before Liam starts getting worked up. You know he doesn't like when I'm not next to him. Especially now he finally decides to propose. I shouldn't keep him waiting." She stands up, adjusts her gorgeous sequin dress for the last time. She looks into the mirror, and this time the breathtaking grey eyes staring back at her has a look of determination rather than the previous anxiety. Elegantly lifting the edge of her dress, she walked out of the room. A grand hall decorated to look like a dreamy palace comes into view, as does the countless number of people gathered as the hall below. Taking in a deep breath, she proceeds down the stairs, her eyes placed on that handsome young man smiling softly with a few patriots below the podium. As she made her way down the stairs and into the crowd of people, slowly heads began to turn to her direction. Gasps and looks of admiration were sent her way, almost drowning her, but Ju remained unfazed. At least she tried to appear unfazed. But when that young man's eyes settled on her, she felt her heart skipped a bit. Her stomach was instantly filled with the feeling of butterflies fluttering endlessly in the pit of her belly. A smile warmed onto the young man's face. Then, just like she expected, his legs stretched and he began to walk in her direction. With each step he took towards her, she became even more flustered. Too flustered to take any more step towards him, so she just stood at the center of the crowd, letting the young man cover the distance between two of them alone. "Oh my God, is that her? She looks pretty, but doesn't she look young? What do you know, they have been together since childhood. It's true love indeed." She could hear the whisper of people from the crowd. Every word they said soaking her flesh, bone and spirit with joy and warmth. She wasn't the type to listen to the thoughts of other, but at this moment she couldn't stop her ears from fishing up the words just as it left the mouth of people. This was her moment of recognition, so she needed it to go well. Well enough to please the heart of man and even the gods in the cosmos. Alas, the distance that felt like the distance between the sun and the earth was covered in 2 minutes. Lee unexpectedly, just when Ju bashfully called out to the young man that had walked up to her, he brushed past her shoulder, walking away like he never saw her. But he did, if not how else could he had spoken to her in a carried-away haste. "Now, Dewey, we can talk later." Ju was stumped. Not now, but what could be more important than their future at this moment? Perhaps curious or stunned, she turned to look at his receding figure. Unfortunately, the eye sees not only the light sun, but the shadows it casts behind objects. With shocked eyes, she watched as Liam walked up to another young lady. He stretched forth his hand and helped her down the stairs like a knight helping his damsel. It was merely just 1 step away from the floor, but he helped her down with so much attention and gentleness. It gave the impression she could probably break into pieces with just that 1 step. The eyes could see but the brain could not comprehend, surely because the heart could not believe and accept what the eye had seen. Ju surely could not believe what her eyes was seeing. Liam and her sister. She was not blind, neither was she stupid. That look in Liam's eyes as well as the bashful smile on Willa's face. How long has she known these two to know just what emotions they were feeling at the moment? It was love, but how come? No, it was impossible. Liam could not be in love with Willa cause he was in love with her. And Willa could not be in love with Liam because she knew fully well that she was in a relationship with Liam. Sadly, the truth was confirmed before her eyes as Liam got down on one knee before Willa the next moment. Known you for 10 years now, and those 10 years were the best years of my life. His deep husky voice recited smoothly, albeit the crowd could see he was trying to contain his anxiety. From the first time I saw you, I said to myself that I was going to protect you for the rest of my life. Now I want to fulfill that promise. Willa Benson, would you be my wife? He took out a small box from his breast pocket and opened it. The dazzling diamond ring shone so brightly as if trying to blind the crowd. Diamond cuts glass, but Ju's heart wasn't even made of glass, so why was the sight of that ring shredding her heart into a million pieces? At the same time his words repeated in her head, now vague but exceedingly heavy. From the first time I saw, I said to myself that I was going to protect you for the rest of my life, but that was her. It was her who he had said those. Surprisingly, she could not finish that thought, cause at that moment she seemed to have remembered. On that snowy day when they had gone hiking on the hills. Ju wasn't the only one with Liam. Unsurprisingly, Willa was there too, and she just happened to be on Ju's back when he had made that promise. It wasn't just that time. All these years that Ju had spent with Liam, Willa had constantly always followed them around like a third leg. So does that mean the love and attention she had enjoyed all these years were not targeted at her, but at Willa? But then what about the kisses and the steamy? Were those in her imagination too? Yes, I'll marry you, that sweet voice rang out and smacked her out of her trance harshly. No, unconsciously Ju blurted out before she could stop herself from causing a scene. The crowd turned immediately. How ironical it was that this was actually the moment she was noticed by everyone. To think that the stares of awe and admiration she had seen earlier were not also directed at her, but at her sister following behind her, sent a small crack across her already quaking heart. Dewey, what are you doing? Liam looked at her with a frown. What was she doing? She was the one that was supposed to be asking that question. What was he doing proposing to her sister with a ring he had worn on her fingers just 2 weeks ago, and asked what she thought about finally taking things to the next level? Was this the next level he was talking about? To become his sister-in-law and watch him wed her own twin sister after she had given 10 years of her life to him? How could you do this to me? She screamed hysterically, matching forward to yank the ring from his hands. Angered, he got back on his feet and yelled, "Stop this nonsense at once."
Of course, this was nonsense. If it wasn't, then how was it that a man who had spent a steamy night with her just 2 days ago was now on his knees asking her twin sister to marry him? This was utter nonsense. She thought it and said it without restraint. We are supposed to be taking our relationship to the next level, so what is the meaning of this? How could you be proposing to my sister? Ah, the crowd gasped. The gossip was nothing they had not heard before, but gossip was gossip, whether new or old. The difference wasn't the timeline, but instead who the subject was each time. Now it just happened to be the CEO of Metrotech who sprang to fame just recently, so how could they not be eager to listen? What nonsense are you spewing? The frown on the young man's face deepened. I have only ever had Willa in my life and no one else. Your wishful thinking has gotten the better of you, wishful. If to add salt on fresh wound, the feeble-looking girl beside him opened her lips and defended him. That's true, sister. I and Lee had been together since childhood. I still have the pledge bracelet he gave me when we were little. She rose her hand and the silver chain bracelet with a little lock pendant dangled before the eyes of everyone. Simultaneously, Liam rose his wrist too to showcase the matching bracelet he had in underneath his suit sleeves. Staring at those bracelet, a strong sense of nausea hit Ju. That bracelet was originally given to her as a New Year gift, but Willa had cried out a river of tears that Liam had asked her to give the bracelet to Willa with the promise to get her something similar some other time, but he never did. It had been 9 years already, but obviously the two of them had given that bracelet some other meaning behind her back. Her obliviousness in all these years now appeared nauseating to her. If she was disgusted in her own stupidity, what was she supposed to feel towards this two that had maliciously toyed with her heart? Why would they even do that to her? One was the young man she had thrown her life away for, just to get him where he was. She discarded her rightful place in her family's company just so she could join him and help him grow his company and give him the success he was now flaunting today. From just a young naive teenager, she sharpened her mind and abilities, becoming such a great strategist that she succeeded in outsmarting even renowned companies and helped his company to get a firm foothold in the tech industry. As it may turn up, she wasn't as great as she thought she was, or else she would have noticed the foul play of these two. The other was her sister. Her very own sister that had been nothing but a liability on her since the moment they were born, yet she had never for once complained. Rather, she devised ways to take care of her sister daily, not minding her childish tantrums or her unreasonableness sometimes. Yet here was that same sister's, stabbing her in the back without even blinking an eye. She and Lee had been together since childhood. How dare she act like she was clueless about the truth? If there was anybody that had the truth encrypted on their palm like a birthmark, it was her. Ju tells her everything. Beside, who was the one that always made up excuses before their parents just so Ju could spend time with Liam? Who was the one that encouraged her ceaselessly to follow her heart? Who was the one? What was the point of recalling all these? It was obvious. Once again, her obliviousness had turned around to bite her in the neck. Why? Why deceive me like this? Seemingly not understanding why they would have chosen to destroy her this way, she questioned breathlessly. You were never meant for this kind of life. You're a busy woman. What times would I have to consider a relationship with you? Liam spat out with an understanding sigh. From the view of the crowd, he was merely trying to explain things to a delusional woman. Busy woman? Ju almost laughed, in fact she did. She threw her head backwards and laughed out a laugh that was laden with an immeasurable amount of pain. Of a truth, she was a busy woman. From the age of 14, she applied for a dual accelerated course of study in computer science and business management, finished uni in 3 years, and immediately began to build his company for him. He was the CEO and the face of the company, whereas she was the brain, muscles, as well as financial backer. Yet who had she done it for? For him, she busied away her teen age and the start of her youth with the hope that when he got his success she would be able to settle down and take things slow as his wife. But what did she get in return? He was using that as a fact to defend his betrayal. You were always strong and independent, never needing anyone's companion but Willa. He paused and looked at the girl beside him, love spewing out of his eyes like volcano from a volcanic mountain. It was absolutely unbridled. Willa has always depended on me. I fell in love with the weak and gentle soul and I don't regret it. She need me as much as I need her. A touching love story, but at whose detriment was this fairy-like love? Weak. Ju opened her eyes in utter disbelief. Then again, it wasn't so hard to believe this was the description he had used for Willa. It was what she showed to others, but was that the truth? If Willa was weak, then what about Ju? Willa was weak, but she wasn't the one born with heart issues. Neither was she the one that actually had to live with pills just for a chance to stay alive. But of course, she was the one that always pretended to be fragile, like the wind would carry her away. It had always been like this. Even at the time of their birth, there was barely a beat from little Ju's heart, but Willa was the one that cried like her life was in serious danger. She cried so much that they had all forgotten about the dying Ju just to placate her. When they were 5, Ju was back in the hospital under oxygen, and coincidentally, Willa had pricked her fingers on a broken glass while playing. She cried so much till she began to have a terrible fever. Once again, the dying Ju was abandoned by their parents to watch over Willa. The list went on and on. As they grew up, Ju would always have to hide her discomfort just because Willa had to have all the attention due to her weak body. How can someone who could be startled into a fever by insects suddenly have the strength to stab her sister in the back? Willa sobbed, weakly snuggling into Liam's arm. Sister, I didn't mean to cause you pain, but I never knew you were into Liam. If I knew, I would never have gotten together with him from childhood. That was her line, but hearing it come out of Willa's mouth only made it sound all wrong and resenting. She stepped forward to slap Willa, yet at the same time 2 elderly people rushed out from the crowd and stood like a blockade between the two of them. How can you hit your sister? The middle-aged woman glared at Ju. Enough, Ju. Whatever this is about, we can talk about this at home. We don't want to startle your sister's health, the man seconded. With her hands still raised slightly, Ju stared at the two of them speechlessly. Her father and mother. In the end, they were aware of everything yet chose to turn a blind eye to it. No wonder they had said nothing when she chose to forfeit her right to the family company to start a company with Liam. They were quick to assure that Willa would take her place as heir to the company and hold the fort for her. Take her place and hold the fort. Were they only talking of the company, or had they meant something else then? But how could they? They were her parents as much as they were Willa's. All those times she brought Liam home and parading him before them as her boyfriend, they all probably treated her like a deranged clown. But why? Was her existence that worthless to them that they could not wait to get rid of her? Whatever was left of the strand keeping her heart together broke at this instant. Was this what heartbreak felt like? It was as physical as it was emotional, cause she was panting for breath the next second. Started gradually, and in a minute she could barely breath. It was like a stake had been driven through the center of her heart. Subconsciously her leg began to move on their own. She turned and staggered her way out of the hall, the jeers of the crowd plunging through her back as she dragged her breathless self out of the hall. At the entrance she frantically looked for her car, while heaving severely. Alas, she found it at the gas station she had parked it in across the road. In her haste to get to it and retrieve her medicine, she made a mistake that cost her more than she had already lost. A loud horn blared, telling everyone that heard it to get out of the way. Sadly, that was the last thing Dew heard before the world turned dark. Yet the next moment the darkness shattered. Dew jolted upright. A sharp pain tore through her chest immediately, forcing a gasp from her lips. "Miss Benson!" Several startled voices rang out. Footsteps approached hurriedly. The room spun. White walls, white sheets, the smell of disinfectant. A heart monitor beeped rapidly beside her bed. Dew stared blankly at the unfamiliar surroundings. Hospital? Why was she in a hospital? Hadn't she died when? A loud horn suddenly exploded inside her mind. Her pupils shrank. The proposal, the crowd, the betrayal, the road, the headlights, the impact, then darkness. Her hands immediately flew to her chest. She remembered everything. "No," she whispered. Her breathing became ragged. She was dead. She should be dead. The nurse quickly pressed her shoulders. "Miss Benson, calm down." Dew's gaze suddenly landed on the calendar hanging across the room. June 16th, her entire body froze. Why was it June 16 and not June 21? Why was it 5 years ago, one day before her 18th birthday, the day she suffered a minor heart attack, the day she was admitted into the hospital, the day before she gave up everything, her inheritance, her future, her life? No, the word left her lips again, this time softer, more terrified. The nurse misunderstood her expression. "Don't worry, the attack wasn't severe. The doctor says you're stable now." Dew nearly laughed. In her previous life she had spent years believing her condition was unavoidable, that fate had cursed her, that she was simply unfortunate. Now she knew the truth. The weak heart beating inside her chest was never hers to begin with. A violent tremor passed through her body. Then another memory surfaced, a memory she desperately wished she could forget. She remembered hearing the door open before she breathed her last in her past life. Then Willers said in a sweet, gentle yet cruel voice, "Sister, you should know the truth before you die." Dew remembered wanting to move, wanting to scream, but her body wouldn't obey. Then Willer had begun talking, one secret after another, like a child proudly showing off stolen treasures. A knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened just like before. Her father entered first, followed by her mother, then Willer. The sight of them made Dew's fingers curl beneath the blanket. The urge to tear them apart surged through her, but she suppressed it. 5 years. She had survived 5 years among these people without knowing the truth. Surely she could survive a few more weeks while knowing everything. "Dew," Willer rushed forward first, exactly like she had done in the previous life. "You're awake." The concern on her face looked flawless. If Dew hadn't heard the truth with her own ears she might have believed it. Again, "What happened?" Willer asked softly. "You scared us." Dew almost laughed. The woman who would eventually unplug her oxygen was asking if she was scared. How amusing. Before she could answer, another man entered the room. "Excellent, Miss Benson is awake," the doctor said as he quickly walked toward the bed. "I've reviewed the latest scans." Dew's expression darkened slightly. She remembered this conversation, every word. The doctor looked toward her parents. Suitable donors had become available. The room became quiet. "Considering Miss Benson's deteriorating condition, I strongly recommend proceeding with the transplant." There it was, the exact moment, the exact conversation, the exact lie she had believed before. Her father immediately frowned. "A transplant?" The doctor nodded. "The compatibility rates are exceptionally high." Her mother grabbed Willer's hand nervously, just like before. "If something goes wrong during surgery," the doctor interrupted. "The success rate is extremely promising." Dew stared at them. 5 years ago she had been touched. She thought her parents were afraid of losing her. Now she understood. They weren't afraid she would die. They were afraid she would live. "No," her father spoke firmly. "We won't proceed." The doctor looked shocked. He tried to convince them, but no matter what he said he was met with the same rejection. Everything exactly as Dew remembered. Only this time she finally understood why. The doctor eventually left. The moment the door closed, Willer moved closer to the bed. "Sister," her voice became pitiful. "You shouldn't blame father. He's only worried about the risks." Dew slowly turned her head. Their eyes met. Willer felt a chill run down her spine. Something was different. The gaze staring at her no longer contained affection, or trust, or dependence. It felt cold, like ice covering a frozen lake. Then Dew smiled, a gentle smile, a smile that instantly erased Willer's unease. "I understand." Willer relaxed. Her father and mother relaxed too. They thought everything was still under control. None of them noticed the hatred hidden beneath that smile. None of them knew that the Dew lying in this hospital bed had already died once. And this time, She remembered everything. The moment her family left the hospital room, the smile vanished from Du's face. Coldness flooded her eyes. In her previous life, she had lain in this very bed feeling grateful for her parents' concern, Willa's companionship, and for Liam's occasional affection. Now she knew every ounce of that gratitude had been misplaced. Du reached for her phone in her bag. She opened her contacts and stared at a familiar contact. It belonged to one of the very few people her grandfather had trusted unconditionally. The man who had disappeared overseas after her grandfather's accident, her grandfather's godson, Ethan Grave. The call connected after 3 rings. "Hello," Du smiled faintly. "Uncle Ethan." Silence, then confusion. "Miss Benson," Du muttered, "I need your help." The next day was her 18th birthday. The Benson estate had transformed into a palace of lights. Luxury vehicles belonging to business tycoons, shareholders, socialites, and influential families lined the entrance. Today was not merely a birthday celebration. It was also the day Du was supposed to be publicly recognized as the future CEO of Benson Group. At least, that was what everyone believed. Inside her room, Dahlia carefully adjusted the final clasp on Du's gown. The midnight blue dress shimmered beneath the chandelier, exactly as Du remembered. Except this wasn't the counterfeit Willa had prepared. An hour ago, Ethan had quietly swapped the orders en route. The fake dress now rested where it truly belonged, in Willa's wardrobe. The banquet hall buzzed with excitement. As expected, Willa wore the same blue gown, the counterfeit, the trap. The crowd admired both sisters. Then, a whisper echoed loudly for everyone nearby to hear. "I heard one of the birthday girls is wearing a counterfeit designer dress." Instantly heads turned. The whisper spread like wildfire. Willa's eyes brightened. She quickly grabbed Du's hand. "Sister," her voice trembled, "I am so sorry." The hall quieted, everyone listened. "I should have said something earlier." Her eyes reddened. "I knew there was something strange about your dress." Du stared at her calmly. Willa continued, "But you loved it so much and wanted to match with me. I didn't want to hurt your feelings." Several guests frowned. Others looked toward Du despicably. What a caring younger sister with a brainless, envious senior sister. One of the invited fashion experts stepped forward. "Perhaps we should verify before making assumptions," he said. The suggestion was immediately accepted. Several experts examined both dresses. Minutes passed, then came the verdict. The expert looked directly at Willa. "Miss Benson," Willa smiled gently, "the counterfeit dress is yours." Silence, absolute silence. The smile froze on Willa's face. "What?" the expert repeated. "The stitching pattern is incorrect. The crystal alignment is wrong. The fabric quality differs from the authentic version. This dress is counterfeit." The room exploded. Then what was all that earlier? Was she trying to frame her sister? How vicious. What a vixen. Willa's face turned white. Her earlier performance now looked less like concern and more like premeditated humiliation. Even her parents looked uncomfortable. Du simply stood there, watching. Just as she had once watched her life burn, only now the flames belonged to someone else. Liam stepped forward at exactly the right moment, as always to be the knight in shining armor. "Enough!" His voice immediately quieted the room. He walked directly toward Willa. A luxurious jewelry box appeared in his hand. Opening it revealed a breathtaking diamond necklace. Gasps filled the hall. "Willa, happy birthday," he said with a doting smile. The crowd immediately forgot part of the embarrassment as a result of the expensive gift as well as the devotion he displayed. Then Liam casually handed Du a second box, a much smaller box. Inside sat a simple silver bracelet. It was cheap, ordinary, and insulting. Several guests exchanged glances. The difference couldn't have been more obvious. Willa's confidence immediately returned, yet before she could enjoy her victory, a voice sounded from the entrance. "Am I late?" Everyone turned. A tall man entered, elegant, composed, and dangerously handsome. Ethan Grave. Even the shareholders recognized him. He walked directly toward Du, ignoring everyone else, then handed over a velvet case. Inside rested the limited edition sapphire set that had recently shaken the luxury market. The value exceeded Liam's gift several times over. The crowd erupted again. Willa's smile cracked. Liam's eyes darkened. For the first time all evening, neither of them liked what they were seeing. Eventually the highlight of the evening arrived. The shareholders raised their glasses. One elder stepped forward. "Today we celebrate not only Miss Du Benson's birthday, but also the future of Benson Group." Applause thundered through the hall. "As stipulated in Chairman Benson's will, Miss Du Benson shall be formally initiated into her position as successor upon reaching adulthood." The crowd nodded. Everyone present was already aware of the inheritance clause. After all, it had been discussed countless times over the years. Her parents exchanged a glance before looking toward Dew. A silent reminder. 1 week ago she had made a promise that tonight she would publicly decline the position and announce that Willa would inherit in her place. The speech had already been prepared. All she had to do was follow the script. Dew rose slowly from her seat. The hall gradually quieted. Dozens of eyes settled upon her. She lifted her champagne glass. A faint smile appeared on her lips. Before accepting everyone's congratulations, there is something I would like to clarify. The shareholders listened attentively. As everyone here already knows, my grandfather's will contains a DNA verification clause. Several elders nodded immediately. Dew said calmly, because that verification process has yet to be completed, I believe it would be inappropriate for me to either accept or transfer the position of successor at this time. The hall fell silent. The statement was perfectly reasonable. No one could find fault with it. In fact, several shareholders looked impressed. The results of the verification process will be presented during the Benson Group anniversary gala next month. Her words settled heavily over the room. Across the hall, her mother's smile stiffened. Her father's expression darkened. Neither had expected her to remind everyone about the DNA clause. Once the matter had been publicly raised, the shareholders would undoubtedly insist that any potential successor, including Willa, undergo the same verification process. The path they had carefully prepared suddenly became far more complicated. Yet despite their displeasure, neither parent spoke, because there was one small consolation. Dew had not accepted the position, nor had she transferred it. The matter remained unresolved, which meant they still had time to persuade her, manipulate her, pressure her, convince her to return to the original plan. Unfortunately for them, the Dew sitting before them was no longer the daughter they thought they knew. The shareholders raised their glasses once more. To Miss Benson, to the future of Benson Group. The toast echoed throughout the hall. Dew lifted her glass alongside them. A calm smile rested on her lips, yet behind that smile the first move of her revenge had already been completed. The celebration ended nearly 2 hours later. Guests gradually departed. The shareholders left discussing the upcoming DNA verification. The Benson family remained behind, and the moment the last outsider disappeared, the atmosphere changed. Dew! Liam's voice rang out first. She had almost forgotten he was still there. Turning around, she found him standing beside Willa. His handsome face carried a trace of displeasure, not anger, displeasure, the sort of expression one reserved for an employee who had failed to follow instructions. I'd like to speak with you. Dew glanced toward the entrance. Then speak. His brows furrowed. The distance in her tone felt unfamiliar. For some reason it irritated him. You changed the plan, he inquired. No, Dew smiled faintly. I postponed the plan, she said. He sighed. You were upset because of the gifts. Dew almost laughed. The gifts, was that truly what he believed? Liam continued before she could answer. I gave Willa the better gift because she's likely to become the next CEO. His tone became patient, as though explaining something obvious. Perception matters in our circles. Willa's reputation matters. Everything I did was for the future. Dew remembered another future, one where she sacrificed everything for him. One where he watched her die. One where he married her sister. How amusing, seeing her remain silent. Liam softened his voice. You know how important you are to me. There was the familiar trap, the same bait that had worked countless times before. In her previous life, hearing those words would have been enough to make her surrender everything. This time, nothing, not even a ripple. The smile on her face remained unchanged, yet her eyes had already turned cold. I'll think about it, she replied blankly. Liam frowned. That wasn't the response he expected. Before he could continue, her father suddenly stepped forward. Dew, the warning in his voice was obvious. You made an agreement. Your grandfather's company was never your dream. You said so yourself. Her mother quickly joined in. Your sister has always wanted to run the company. You've always preferred supporting others. Surely you haven't forgotten. Subtle pressure, subtle emotional blackmail. The techniques were so familiar she could almost predict every word before they spoke it. Willa lowered her eyes. Sister, her voice trembled. If you truly want to keep it, I won't fight you. What a generous victim, what a noble younger sister. Dew stared at her. For a brief moment she almost admired the performance. Almost. Enough, a calm voice interrupted them. Everyone turned. Ethan stood nearby, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other holding a glass of champagne. His gaze swept across the group, then landed on Dew. Why don't you leave the decision until you've had time to think clearly? Nobody liked that suggestion, especially not her parents. Ethan ignored them. Dew, his tone softened. If this environment is making things difficult, you can stay at my residence for a while. The room immediately froze. What? Her mother blurted. Her father's face darkened. Absolutely not. If Ju left their control now, everything could become unpredictable. Ethan merely continued, "No pressure. You can stay until you've made up your mind." Silence followed. "Then I'll go." The answer came immediately, no hesitation, no uncertainty, just two simple words. Everyone froze, even Ethan blinked. He hadn't expected her to agree so quickly. "Ju," her mother exclaimed, "you can't be serious." Her father looked ready to explode. "You are not leaving this house." Ju calmly met his gaze. "Why?" The simple question caught him off guard. Because what? Because they needed her, because they needed her shares, because they needed her inheritance, because they needed her obedience. For a moment he found himself unable to answer. His face darkened, then finally, "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." The threat echoed throughout the room. Willa's eyes immediately brightened. Surely Ju would back down now. After all, she always craved family affection, always sought approval, always surrendered first. Yet the next second Ju smiled. "Then I'll trouble you no further, father." The colour drained from everyone's faces. She turned, walked directly toward Ethan, and left without looking back. The rumours began 3 days later. As expected, according to society's latest gossip, Miss Ju Benson had become reckless. Miss Ju Benson was living with a man. Miss Ju Benson had abandoned her family. Miss Ju Benson was drinking herself into ruin. Miss Ju Benson had become mentally unstable after her illness. The story spread rapidly, every version more outrageous than the last. Yet strangely, the target of those rumours seemed completely unaffected. While society discussed her downfall, Ju spent her days elsewhere, studying documents, reviewing company records, meeting private investigators, recovering old evidence, and most importantly, preparing the DNA tests. One for herself, one for Willa, one for her mother. One for Chairman Benson. The samples were collected discreetly, the process moved quietly. Meanwhile, her family grew increasingly desperate. Calls arrived daily, messages arrived hourly, every conversation ended the same way. "Ju, reconsider. Ju, think about your sister. Ju, don't destroy this family." The words entered one ear and left the other, because for the first time in 2 lives, Ju had stopped loving them, and once love disappeared, their chains lost all power. The Benson Group anniversary gala began long before the first speech. Reporters had gathered outside the venue hours in advance. Cameras flashed endlessly, questions flew in every direction. The moment the Benson family stepped out of their vehicle, the crowd surged forward. "Chairman Benson, is it true Miss Ju Benson has been living with a man for the past month? Has she really abandoned her family? What is her current mental condition? Will she still be inheriting Benson Group tonight?" The barrage of questions came one after another. For a brief second, Mr. Benson appeared startled. Then a look of helpless sadness settled over his face. The performance was flawless. "As her father," he sighed heavily, "I honestly don't know what happened." The reporters immediately quieted. His shoulders slumped. His expression became pained. "Ju has been acting unlike herself lately. I've tried speaking with her countless times, but she refuses to listen." A few reporters exchanged glances. His voice became even heavier. "Perhaps," he hesitated, as though struggling to continue, "perhaps the doctor's prognosis affected her more deeply than we realized." The crowd erupted. "What prognosis? Are you saying Miss Ju's condition is worsening?" Mr. Benson lowered his head. "The doctors informed us that her condition may not leave her much time." Gasps echoed throughout the entrance. Beside him, Mrs. Benson immediately dabbed at her eyes. Her tears seemed genuine, painful, heartbreaking. Meanwhile, Willa stood silently beside them, a picture of sorrow, a picture of devotion, the perfect younger sister. A reporter quickly turned toward her. "Miss Willa, do you have anything to say?" Willa bit her lip, her eyes reddened. For a moment she appeared unable to speak. Then softly she said, "I only want my sister to be happy." Her voice trembled. "If carrying some of her burden can help her rest." She paused. "Then I'd gladly do it." The implication was obvious. No one needed it explained. The crowd immediately reached their own conclusions. Miss Ju was dying. Miss Ju had become unstable. Miss Ju was unable to shoulder responsibility. Therefore, Willa Benson would most likely inherit everything tonight. The cameras flashed even more furiously, exactly as planned. The Benson couple exchanged subtle glances. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Tonight Ju would never appear. The transfer documents had already been prepared. Her forged signature had already been replicated. By the time she managed to emerge, everything would be finished. The company's gala, the inheritance, the power exchange, all of it would belong to Willa. Inside the ballroom, discussions buzzed endlessly. Every guest seemed to be talking about the same thing. "Ju isn't here. Looks like the rumours are true. Poor girl. Perhaps it's really Willa tonight." Even several shareholders had begun considering the possibility. At precisely 8 o'clock the ceremony began. Willa sat beside her parents, elegant, poised, beautiful, the image of a future heiress. Her heart pounded with excitement. Just a little longer, and everything would belong to her. Then the grand entrance doors opened. Silence swept through the ballroom. Every head turned, every conversation stopped, every breath seemed to freeze. A pair of heels clicked softly against the marble floor. One step, then another. Dew Benson walked into the ballroom, alive, healthy, elegant, and completely free. The colour drained from Willa's face. Her mother's wine glass slipped from her hand. Even Mr. Benson stood abruptly. Impossible, absolutely impossible. She should have been detained. The people arranged to delay her should have already succeeded, so why was she here? Dew ignored their expressions, ignored the whispers, ignored the cameras. She simply walked toward the stage, then smiled. Good evening. The simple greeting felt like thunder. The shareholders stared, the reporters stared, the guests stared. Dew's gaze eventually settled on her family. I apologize for being late. A chill crawled up Willa's spine. Something was wrong, very wrong. Then Dew raised a stack of documents. I discovered something interesting recently. The smile on her face widened. Several things, actually. The files landed on the podium. At the same time the projector projected a compilation of documents on the large screen. Fraud, embezzlement, forgery, evidence proving attempts to illegally transfer company ownership. One document after another, each carrying one accusation after another. The ballroom erupted. What is this? Impossible. Forgery, attempted inheritance theft. Willa's face became paper white. Dew, her father roared. Enough, his voice echoed across the ballroom. Immediately he pointed toward her. She's lying. She's mentally unstable. The room fell silent. The accusation was devastating. Several reporters hesitated. Several guests frowned. Then Mr. Benson struck while the iron was hot. My daughter has been suffering severe emotional instability. The rumors are true. Everything she's saying is the result of her condition. His wife immediately burst into tears. Willa followed. The image was convincing, heartbreaking, believable for a moment. The crowd began wavering. Then another voice sounded, old, weak, yet impossibly authoritative. Then perhaps, the voice echoed through the hall, you should explain why you tried to kill me. Complete silence. Everyone turned. The grand doors opened once more. A wheelchair rolled forward. The elderly man seated upon it appeared thinner than before, older, frailer. Yet the moment his face became visible, the ballroom exploded. Chairman Benson, impossible. He's awake. Didn't they say he was permanently unconscious? Grandfather Benson slowly rolled forward. Beside him stood Ethan. The realization struck the family instantly. It had been Dew. She had changed the doctors, changed the treatment, and saved him. Chairman Benson's gaze settled upon his son-in-law. Disgust filled his eyes. I trusted you. Mr. Benson staggered backward as he stammered, Dad, shut up. The old man's voice cracked like a whip. The entire ballroom fell silent. Then came the testimony. The affair, the mistress, the murder of his daughter, the poisoning, the attempt on his own life, the theft of his company, the conspiracy against Dew, every truth was dragged into the light. One by one, mercilessly, the police entered before he had even finished speaking. Mr. Benson collapsed, his mistress screamed, handcuffs clicked, the crowd watched in stunned silence as both were dragged away. Willa stood frozen, her entire world crumbling around her, and through it all Dew simply watched. Same way they had once watched her die. Only now the roles had been reversed, the hunters had become prey, and there was nowhere left for them to run. The collapse happened faster than anyone imagined. One night, that was all it took. By dawn, every major news outlet had picked up the story. The Benson Group scandal, the arrest of Mr. Benson and his mistress. Every hour brought new revelations. Every revelation buried the family deeper. And in the middle of it all stood Dew, the rightful heir. The victim, the survivor. Willa disappeared that same night. No farewell, no explanation, no trace. By the time reporters reached the Benson estate, her room was already empty. She fled with whatever cash and jewelry she could carry. For days she hid, watching the news, watching as her life crumbled. The public tore her apart. The once beloved younger daughter had become the nation's favorite villain. Her face appeared everywhere. People mocked her tears, mocked her weakness, mocked her carefully crafted image, the same image she had spent years building. Now it was completely gone. Yet the destruction had only just begun. As the Benson family continued sinking deeper into scandal, another family moved with remarkable speed, the Pollards. Before public outrage could reach them, they severed every visible connection to the Benson family. Statements were released, lawyers were deployed. Within days, the narrative had changed. The Pollards were no longer viewed as accomplices. They had become victims. victims of deception and manipulation, victims of Willa Benson. The internet eagerly embraced the new storyline. Articles began appearing daily, old photographs vanished, business records were revised, public appearances were reinterpreted, every trace of Willa's importance slowly disappeared from history. The process was so thorough it almost seemed as though she had never existed. Then came the merger. A massive deal between Metrotech and one of the industry's fastest-growing corporations. The announcement dominated financial news for an entire week. Analysts praised Liam's foresight, investors celebrated, the Pollard family emerged from the scandal wealthier than ever. For the public it was the perfect comeback story. For Willa it was another nail in the coffin. Then the interview arrived. A simple interview, the sort that would have gone unnoticed under normal circumstances. Instead it became the most discussed clip on the internet. Millions watched it. By the following morning every major platform carried the same headlines. Liam Pollard's deepest regret. Liam Pollard's first love. Liam Pollard's confession. The story spread like wildfire. The handsome entrepreneur spoke of misunderstandings, of a woman he had never truly forgotten, a woman whose intelligence, strength and loyalty he had failed to appreciate until it was too late. Ju Benson. The internet devoured the story. What had once been a scandal transformed into a tragic romance. The public became convinced that Ju and Liam had been separated by a scheming third party, and that third party had a name, Willa Benson. The hatred that followed was unlike anything she had experienced before. People who once adored her now despised her. People who once defended her now condemned her. People who had never met her cursed her existence. Every screen she looked at reflected the same message. Everything was her fault. Everything, the company, the scandal, the betrayal. The failed relationship, the destruction of two families. Everything. For the first time in her life Willa found herself completely alone. No parents, no friends, no supporters, no Liam, most of all no future. Something inside her broke, not gradually, not painfully. Instantly, the final thread holding her sanity together snapped. 3 days later an anonymous message arrived, an address and a claim, nothing more. Enraged and deranged, she didn't bother to question it. By the time the rain began falling that evening she had already stolen a vehicle. By the time she reached the restaurant district, she had already convinced herself of what she would find. And when she finally saw a familiar figure emerge beneath the streetlights, every remaining fragment of reason vanished. The sight was enough. A tall man with a woman protected beneath his coat. A scene the world would have called romantic. A scene Willa interpreted as betrayal. The vehicle accelerated. Only after the distance vanished did reality reveal itself. The woman was not Ju, it never had been. The face illuminated by the headlights belonged to Liam's cousin. The same cousin whose inappropriate attachment to Liam had followed him for years. The same cousin who, in another lifetime, had become the unwitting executioner of Ju Benson orchestrated by Willa. Recognition arrived, then impact. The street became chaos. The outcome shocked the nation. Liam Pollard died before emergency services arrived. His cousin died beside him. Willa survived. Unfortunately, the collision shattered her spine, destroyed her vocal cords, left her completely paralyzed from the neck down. When she regained consciousness, police officers were already stationed outside her room. The criminal charges followed shortly afterward. There would be no escape, no miraculous recovery, only a prison sentence waiting patiently at the end of a hospital corridor. A week later, Ju visited. The room was silent when Ju entered. The woman lying in the bed looked nothing like the radiant beauty who had once stolen every spotlight, nothing like the beloved daughter. She looked broken mentally and physically. Ju pulled a chair forward and sat. Her gaze lingered on Willa for a moment. Then she smiled, a small smile, not victorious, not cruel, simply final. "You know, I should probably thank you," she said. Willa's eyes immediately widened. A furious sound escaped her throat. Ju continued anyway. "You spent so many years hiding the truth, then right at the end you couldn't resist showing off." Another furious moan escaped Willa. Her eyes burned with hatred. Ju merely watched, calmly. "The funny thing is that you actually won in your previous life." The hatred in Willa's eyes froze. For the first time genuine fear appeared. "You got everything you wanted. Liam, the company, my death, you got it all." The room became deathly silent. Willa's eyes shook violently. Ju leaned forward slightly. "And that's exactly why I came." A chill settled over the room. "Because I wanted you to know something." The smile on her face deepened. "I saw it all. I heard every word. I died once already." Terror exploded across Willa's face. At last, everything made sense. Ju rose to her feet. Just before leaving, she paused. "In your last life, you got what you wanted." The words settled heavily over the room. Then came the final sentence. In this one you got what you deserved. The door closed, and for the rest of her life Willa Benson remained exactly where fate had left her, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to forget.